Okay, a few more may be coming in, but I'm going to get started because it is time. So welcome, Presidents-elect. My name's Peter Schultz from the Rotary Now Club in Kelowna, District 5060. And I have the honor of being your training leader for today's facilitated discussion. I've served as club president, district governor, and many roles, including district trainer. And currently I'm an innovative club advocate for Zone 28. Facilitated learning is a technique that I have enjoyed for many years since joining Rotary as a training leader for previous PET sessions, the Rotary Learning Institute, the Zone Institute for Training Governors, and most recently at International Assembly, which is the annual District Governor-elect Training Week that usually happens in January every year. So this kind of open, facilitated discussion only works if we're all engaged and we keep the space safe. So please contribute your thoughts and ideas and be respectful of all others. And please keep your phone off, or at least on silent. No email and no internet surfing. I guarantee you somebody's going to say something that you're going to want to go check out on the Rotary International website or on Google. Just write a little note and check it out later. There'll be lots of time for that. You've taken 4 core courses in January: leadership, membership, foundation, and public image. So the second part of PATS, and I'm so sorry it's not live, it would have been way more fun live, but there you go. Second part is for exploring Rotary's 4 priorities from their strategic plan, and together with our mission statement, these make up what we call our action plan. So increasing our impact focuses not only on maximizing the benefit and sustainability of our service, but also on measuring and talking about what we do so the world will better understand that Rotarians are indeed people of action. In today's session, we're going to have 2 breakouts where you'll discuss in small groups some of the questions that we'll put forward, and you'll report back to us all, and Tim will guide that discussion and keep each report out to a couple of minutes. You should have a digital or a printed copy of a workbook available for taking notes. And this session is on pages 30 to 32 of the workbook. And if you registered before Wednesday, you would have got a copy of just those 3 pages, which I emailed to you. You'll also need a copy of the idea book, which is a very short little book that we will use for action items at the end. If you do not have the idea book, please go ahead and indicate that in the chat along with your email, and Tim is prepared to send you a copy, but you should have that by now. And Tim, we're joined today by our support training leader, Tim Leahy, who will step in if something happens with my internet. And he'll monitor the chat when required and take attendance. I see everybody has their name. That's good. That's the easiest way for us to interact and for him to take attendance. Tim, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, you bet, Peter. Thank you. So I'm Tim Leahy from the Bellevue East Side Club. I've been in Rotary for over 20 years now, where I've held a variety of positions in a couple of different clubs. 3 years ago, I left my Friday morning club after I retired and formed a new Flex Club, which is a happy hour club. We meet at happy hour once a month, and I've served there as president for the first 2 years, and not just get to sit back and enjoy it, which you'll all be able to do once you're done with your term as presidents.
Thank you. So you've all been in many Zoom sessions, so quickly, stay muted unless you're answering a question or offering a comment. Make sure, as we talked about at the beginning, for those of you who are here at the beginning, make sure you're in gallery mode so you can see all the faces, and that you drag that little, drag the bar between the faces and the PowerPoint to make the PowerPoint small so you can see the faces larger. If you wish to share or answer a question, please raise your hand. There's a reactions button at the bottom of the Zoom with a digital hand, but it's probably just as easy to hold your hand up. I just point my hand towards the camera. It's real easy to see. Whatever works, I'm going to be watching for all of them. So we want Rotary to have enduring legacy. Increasing our impact focuses on making sure our efforts and service are creating maximum positive long-term change. And that's a takeaway. Impact for Rotary is positive long-term change. So for example, by providing training, that's our input or our service for healthcare workers, that's the output of what we do. But we want to go beyond input and output. We see a reduction in disease, and that's an outcome. And that can lead to an improvement in the health or well-being of children. And that is impact. That's positive long-term change. And that's really what we want to watch for in the things we do in Rotary. This priority also focuses on us building the practices and capacity needed to define, measure, track, and analyze the results of our service projects more effectively. Rotary International plans to use the lessons that we learned from our primary project of eradicating polio to help shape approaches for measuring and evaluating impact in all their areas of focus. As Rotarians and clubs, we can work to increase our impact by making sure we respond to what our communities need. So we have objectives for every session, and today we have 4 of them. First, we want to be able to explain what it means to increase our impact and why it's important. Second, we want to understand the value of community needs assessment. And third, we want to understand the value of a member's needs assessment. And finally, we want to be able to act on creating ways to evaluate the impact and effectiveness of our service. As mentioned before, Rotary impact is defined as positive long-term change. So when I say the word impact, what comes to mind for you? Short answers, a few words, a word. Any of you, what comes to mind? I say impact. Yes, Elspeth. And then
Making a difference.
thank you. And Leanne.
I forgot. Movement.
That's okay.
Movement.
Movement. Celia.
Being able to measure quantifiable difference.
A quantifiable difference, sure. Anyone else? I say impact.
Success.
Tamara? Still muted.
Effect. Impact for me is something that is like sort of emotional, like to feel it.
To feel it, sure. Emotional, yeah. All these are right? There's so many ways to think about it, but impact means it's important, right? It's important to us. So how about Rotary's impact on ourselves? How has Rotary impacted your life or maybe those around you? Melinda, then Tamara, then Judy.
For me, Rotary's impacted me in so many ways. I feel part of the community, and I love that I've gotten absolutely tremendous friends from Rotary, and they impact my life on a daily basis.
Okay.
Okay, for me, I feel that it's brought out the best in me and brought out my qualities that have laid a little dormant since I retired.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's very good. And Judy.
For me, it's I've been a Rotarian for 5 years, and it has allowed me the opportunity to grow in leadership style and leadership overall, and the ability to continue after retirement to make a difference in our community and where we live.
Celia.
I think that it's made me more aware and more empathetic of others in my community outside of my personal interactions in the world. So looking beyond those communities that I'm not part of, and made me more aware, more sensitive, and more empathetic.
You know, I hear our core values in what all of you are saying. We have 5 core values. Service, I'm hearing that. Fellowship, leadership, integrity, diversity. Those are our core values. And don't you agree? We're hearing that come through in all these descriptions. So why then is making a greater impact, right? That's our priority here, is trying to make greater impact with what we do. Why is making greater impact in our communities and the world important? Anyone else? Celia?
I believe that we're here to solve the grand challenges facing humanity, and we're already doing that in our 7 areas of focus. So the greater impact we have, the faster and the more successful we will be in reaching those big goals.
Sure, creating a better world. Huh? But it also, you know, it strengthens our brand, doesn't it? Is that important?
Mhm.
Yeah. We talked about what impact means in terms of Rotary and why it's important. So now let's consider how we can increase the impact that our clubs and members have in our communities and around the world. You know, often Rotary clubs look for service that's all set up by other agencies, like ringing bells for Salvation Army or packing hampers for the food bank. And there's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes it can be more satisfying to tackle problems that nobody's taken on. An example, so all the clubs in my area participate in the helping Salvation Army and the food bank and all those other things. And it's good work and good social service. But about 70 years ago, one of the clubs in our city asked the city, what's the greatest need? And they said affordable housing. And the city actually donated a block on the edge of town, and the Rotary clubs built a string of 70 small apartments in like a kind of row housing arrangement. And then they rented them to seniors with demonstrated need for about half of what the current affordable housing rent was normally. And the club maintained these units for decades. They would landscape, or they'd rake leaves, they'd repair floors, they'd do whatever was needed. And it was so bonding for the Rotarians and non-Rotarians who often joined the work party, or people would bring their kids or their friends. It was not only a huge benefit to the seniors renting and the city, but to the Rotarians. It's always best to do a needs assessment and find out what the community wants, and then let Rotary leadership get down and get it done. So when I say community needs assessment, what comes to mind for you? Anyone?
Reaching out to local community groups. Our club works closely with our district as well, and essentially went to the district and said, you know, what are some things that you'd love to do, but that you don't have the funding to do, or there's other constraints holding you back. And they gave us a list of ideas, and we took that back to our club, and we're just actually finishing up a shelter at the local dog park that the district just built. They got a grant to build the dog park, the fencing, the plumbing for a fountain, some other stuff, but they didn't have enough money to build a shelter. And so we came in there and we're building that now and have grand opening in May.
Congratulations, that's great. Anybody else? When I say community needs assessment, what do you think of Judy?
We just, and I shared this earlier in another session, but we just started participating. Our downtown city was damaged by a great fire on New Year's Day, and some families' housing was also destroyed. And so we were I really am proud of this. We were the first people in the door to this foundation that was opening a fund to help these people and the businesses. And we made a huge donation, and now we're getting ready to help clean up and establish, and we've got the families back in homes. And I mean, I've seen the impact that that's had on our community about Rotary. I mean, it's a great thing to do anyway, but Rotary rose to the top on this, and it was amazing to watch.
And not only does the community appreciate it, but the pride of the Rotarians who are a
Mhm.
part of it. It's engaging, it's bonding, that's good. So how might a club go about conducting a community needs assessment? Any thoughts?
A lot of times social media, it's very hands-on at the moment, and just with a couple of simple questions, people would answer through social media.
Sure, social media is a good way to reach out and ask questions. Any other thoughts? How could your club figure out what the community needs or wants? Melinda?
I think earlier in a session, somebody had suggested going to your Chamber of Commerce and asking what's happening there. We do a lot with the food bank to help and feeding kids in schools that might go hungry, which has been great.
Sure, you can ask the chamber. Good. Others? Judy?
I was just going to throw in that working with your city leaders, bringing them into the picture. And then we're in a very diverse community. And we are, through this last project, we are now holding hands with several organizations that take care of diversity and equity. And it's opened new doors. So getting that input.
Is partnering with different organizations can be very effective for Rotary and the city. Sure, the city, that's how that apartment thing I told you about a moment ago, that's how that started, is some Rotarians asked the city. But you could also go to your school boards or police or fire or, any the hospital foundation, and any of these organizations. If the club gets out and asks these people, what is it you need most? You get lots of ideas for service. So then a community needs assessment is basically just an organized way to investigate what's really needed, whether we're talking about it at our own homes or for an international project. And if you've been involved at all with a global grant, one of these big international projects, that's an essential part of applying for the money, is the needs assessment. So how can a community needs assessment, how can this lead us to having greater impact? I think you've mostly covered that, but what do you think? How does it lead us to greater impact? Yes, Rhonda.
Yeah, it can help target our efforts so we know that we can be more effective with our time and resources.
Makes it more effective. Sure, absolutely. Anything we do to be more effective is more impactful. Okay, we're going to have a poll, and Tim is going to launch this poll question. Has your club conducted a needs assessment in the last 3 years? Okay, looks like everybody has answered, and it's pretty close to 50-50, maybe a little bit more on the no. Okay, thanks for that. Tim, you can stop sharing that. It's a useful thing to do. There are many ways to identify projects, but a needs assessment is probably the best way to identify what the community really wants. It can also expand our reach. As Judy was talking about partnerships. When you partner with other groups in your community on these projects, they learn about Rotary and you learn about them. In addition to the community, to maximize our impact, it's important to engage all of our members who wish to do service. If a club focuses its time and resources on a pet project of one or maybe a few of its members, the others may not be highly motivated. So what benefits can you see in conducting a club members' needs assessment? Elspeth?
You find out what everybody's passion is.
Find out what their passion is. Yeah, that's good. Anyone else? What benefits? Rhonda? And then Alex. muted, Rhonda.
It contributes toward retention of your membership.
Retention, yes. Something we need to pay attention to. Alex?
When you make everybody inclusive, then you have everybody on board and everybody will work together.
Yeah, so we get more buy-in, right? We're doing a project that the members are all a part of, yeah. Sure, that's straightforward. So what are some possible ways to conduct a club members' needs assessment? How could you do that? Yes, Alex?
Engage everybody in a conversation during meetings and bring ideas, ask
Sure.
questions.
Yeah. You have meetings, Celia?
I just did something similar with Google Forms, created a survey in Google Forms. And what's great is that you can, when people answer it, it collects and aggregates all that data into a spreadsheet.
Yes, Google Forms, for those who haven't discovered, is a nice free way to do surveys. Elspeth?
There's that thing, I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it's the how healthy is your Rotary Club?
It's
Thing?
called a Rotary Club Health Check.
Health check. Thank you.
Yes, that's a great document.
Yeah.
Any other ways? Rhonda?
We had personal conversations with all of our members over the last while.
Yep, just one-on-one conversations. You know, there's no right way, no wrong way, but the point, of course, is let's ask the questions and let's get the answers and figure out what people want. So what are some of the things that you might ask? Yeah, Melinda.
Sorry. I would just say, how are you feeling? Just check out where they're feeling and how they're finding. Like for us, we found that we've retained a lot of the membership with the elderly with the hybrid meetings as well. So doing both, I think, makes a huge difference.
Yes, it's good if you can do hybrid meetings. Not everybody has somebody with the technical skill, but if you do, that's a great way to cross-mentor with younger Rotarians or Rotaractors, isn't it? Is get them helping us with the technology. Here's some of the other things you might ask. Somebody mentioned passion earlier. Celia.
I'm the PI director for my club, and I noticed in my stats that only about less than half of the people were actually opening and reading the weekly bulletin that I was putting out. So in the survey that I did, I asked, how do you want to be engaged? How do you want to stay informed about what's happening in Rotary? Do you want a text message? Do you want a phone call? Do you want to look on Facebook? Do you want to look on Club Runner? Do you want us to continue a weekly bulletin?
That's a good thing to ask. What did you learn?
That everyone has a different modality of how they want to be communicated with. We haven't figured out the consensus yet, but
welcome to Rotary. Anyone else? What questions?
Well, the previous question and this question, it's a great opportunity to use a vision. If you have a vision meeting and come up with a vision and then revisit it over and over again, and that will include that type of conversation.
There you go. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to go into small group discussions, and Tim's going to break you into 4 rooms. So there'll be 3 or 4 of you maybe in each room. And right, so far, it's important. We've talked about what it means to increase our impact and why it's important and how we might discover what's most important to the community and our members. So now we're going to spend a bit of time to see how we can put it all into action, since we are people of action. So you'll be randomly assigned to the 4 rooms. And before you click join, make sure you notice what room number you're in. Tim will have put 4 questions, and here they are in the PowerPoint in unreadable form. But Tim will have put them in the chat.
Yeah,
where you
they're
can-
already there.
where you can read them quite clearly. So if you're in room number 1, discuss question number 1 and so on. Choose one of your members to be a scribe, and when you come back after 12 minutes of chat, Tim will get a report from you. So see you in 12 minutes.
All right, everybody's back, I believe. So hopefully you had a lively discussion, excuse me, in your breakout sessions. So what we're going to do is I'm going to call on each individual group, and whoever your representative is, if you'd give us a quick minute and a half dissertation on what you folks came up with, that would be great. We'll all learn from you. So group number 1 was, their question was, how will you foster new service project ideas to create positive momentum in the club? How will you get the members buy-in for the project or projects? And how can you tie in fundraising efforts for the project? So who's our reporter for group 1?
That would be me. I'm Celia.
Hello,
we had a-
Celia.
Hi, we had a very lively discussion. We talked a lot about the service projects that we're currently doing, and then kind of try to figure out, working backwards, like what was actually the process that happened to get consensus among our clubs. We have a lot of the clubs have kind of legacy projects that they're committed to year after year, that the clubs continue to be involved with, like Christmas hamper collecting, gifts for needy kids or needy seniors, partnering, so and seizing opportunities that come up. Judy's club had an opportunity where Banana Republic retail store was able to give them clothing with new tags, and they immediately seized that opportunity and turned that into a clothing sale, and it helped kids prior to going back to school, and then whatever was left over then got given to another organization that supported vets. So it was a service project that was actually tied into fundraising and also had a lot of community outreach, both in the local community and then continuing to serve the vets. So as she said, paying it forward and paying it forward and paying it forward. Our club, actually, to facilitate new ideas within the club, we have a form on our Club Runner webpage where people can download and fill out a form if they have an idea, and then they can submit it to the group, and then that gets put forward and our club votes on it. Other ways that service projects come about is through an interest in the club around an impact area or a needs area, like child exploitation. So John was sharing some of the work that their club has done in a number of different ways around stopping child trafficking and child exploitation. So looking at the service and building wells, so looking at the 7 areas of focus, and then actually looking at the work that the action groups are doing and coming up with service projects that support those activities.
Thanks, Celia. You had an active group with a lot of interesting ideas and a lot of experience from what it sounds like. Thank you for sharing that. Group number 2, your board of directors has directed your group to complete a community needs assessment, set up a plan for that. Who's our reporter on group number 2?
I'm the reporter for that.
Thank you, Bruce.
So yeah, so the sort of the plan we came up with was to divide our club into groups for different kinds of and because we have a list of people to approach, like the city council, the county executive, the school district, senior centers. We have a couple of those in West Seattle where I live, and and then family service groups, just to cover different age groups and get some ideas for areas we could help. And we decided we would put together a survey for people to fill out, and the idea was we could deliver it electronically or in person, or we could do direct phone calls in some cases, or text messages to just directly ask people these questions, and then sort of as a group, everyone would set up what questions we were going to ask based on what we were trying to, which area we were approaching, you know, senior centers versus school district, for instance, and try to keep those minimal, because we all seem to get quizzed for surveys every day, 6 times a day. So I know that I don't answer them very often unless I think they're important. And then so try to use social media in some cases, try to keep that very specific though, so we're not broadcasting to the whole world what our questions are, just because we get so many responses. And as we know these days, things can get political on you really fast by accident.
So it sounds like your plan is pretty targeted towards your specific community, which certainly makes sense.
Yeah, in this case it is.
Yeah.
And
Thank you, Bruce. Group number 3, adding members with diverse backgrounds and skills helps increase your club's impact. How can you identify with people in the community with more diverse skills and backgrounds, and how can you attract them to your club? So who's leading group number 3?
That's me, Jason.
Thanks, Jason.
We basically just talked about taking a needs assessment within our club, and then determining what is lacking, and then searching for those people within our community, whether it be superintendents of schools or principals, law enforcement. One good comment was that there's never been a local Indian tribe part of their local Rotary, and seeking it people there, trying to get the ethnic diversity as well. But lots of different ideas. Clergymen, looking at the disabled community, whether it be in Special Olympics or anything like that. Looking at age classifications even. I mean, not trying to get into the dangerous 5 here, but looking through those different demographics basically that are possibly lacking in our clubs, and what we can do to reach out to those. And then just putting together a plan to recruit, get people in there, help them see the why, and bring them in.
Nice opportunity to really reach out to a variety of diversified groups, from what it sounds like. Well done, thank you. Group number 4, as leaders of your club, how can you lead and inspire your members to increase your club's impact? Group number 4 leader.
Okay, I guess that would be me. We came up with number 1 is to engage the members as a leader, walk the walk, lead by example. Number 3 is keeping the meetings interesting. And we had a little bit of discussion of different type of meetings, if they're weekly, bi-weekly, and so on. Like, for example, in our case in Clearwater, we meet bi-weekly, and the third meeting is a guest speaker, and the fourth meeting will be a social. So you keep the members engaged again, right? And number 4 was debriefing. So when an event happens and so on, we see what works and what didn't work. And that way we engage everybody that has been working with us. That's about it in a nutshell.
That is, it's a good nutshell. And sounds like your group obviously addressed the fact that as presidents of our clubs, we certainly can have a major impact on the increase of the members' participation and interest. So thanks everybody for your responses. Appreciate it. Peter, back to you.
Thank you, Tim. And thank you, everybody, all 4 groups for great work. Obviously, great discussions while you were in the breakouts. I think we can see from all the reports that for our clubs to increase our impact, it takes planning and organization. And these are the kinds of discussions like you had in breakouts. You can have these kinds of discussions in your clubs, and not only will it help you to increase the impact of what you do, but you're going to have more engaged members as well. So our Rotary Foundation just received the highest rating from Charity Navigator for its 15th consecutive year. Recently, there's many nonprofits, including Rotary, that have begun to increase their focus on measuring the impact of their work. For Rotary, the new emphasis on measuring impact must be part of what we do. Our CEO and General Secretary, John Huco, says, and I quote, "The gold standard of social impact is changing. The benchmarks of our progress are not just financial health, accountability, and transparency. They are also our ability to measure what we do and prove that our efforts translate into concrete impact based on clear evidence." So we're going to do another poll. Does your club perform evaluations or have programs in place to measure the effectiveness of impact of your projects? Looks like strongly no. Well, that's a good thing to do. As a club president, you may want to think about ways to measure the impact of what your club does. Now, for clubs that do, and there was a couple of you that said you do have ways to measure it, would you share with us how you go about it? How do you measure the impact? Yes, Rhonda.
Well, our international projects are definable projects that we're able to say, for instance, they now have a workable septic pool. The open sewer that was going through the heart of a hospice in Thailand is no longer there. And, you know, it's clean now, and there's a new roof, and, you know, there's those sorts of measurable things, and we've got all our before and afters. So it's, the impact is, you know, we could be looking at, now that we're thinking more in terms of as well, the community impact of that, but they are definable before and after projects. We are working with a children's center, an orphanage in Cambodia, and a hospice in Thailand.
Good. So that's measuring in international. Does anybody have an example of how you measure the impact of your local projects?
Well, I wanted to add to Rhonda's example. I think it's a wonderful one because you can see physical evidence of change, but I think also measuring things like drop in disease, family well-being, going directly to those who receive the benefits of that sewer being closed and that septic tank now being functional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's a really good point. Thank you.
And Jason.
Yeah, I think initially when you start a project, you should know what your impact desires are, or what you're trying to actually reach, so that when you finally get to that point, you can say whether or not your goal is reached. That'd probably be a really good starting point. Sometimes it's difficult to know, like our community cleanup projects are just really about, you know, cleaning up our community, community pride, things like that. And you really don't get to see necessarily the impact it made in people's lives per se, but it's pretty cool to see that many dumpsters filled with garbage and junk. And it's amazing to see Les Schwab tires, junk trailer fill up, you know, and so, you know, you've done good by just cleaning up the community, but sometimes it's hard to measure that if you don't know what you're shooting for in the beginning. So.
Sure. I know of one city in our district that has 5 Rotary clubs in the city, and they do a community cleanup and they weigh the bags. So they make a real competition out of it, and lots of bragging rights for the one that's got the most bags and so on. But yeah, it's good if you've got defined objectives. Anybody have any ideas if we wanted to measure our impact? What are some ways we could go about it?
Judy's got her hand up.
Thank you, Judy.
Well, I can answer both that and what we did in our club. We had two large projects we took on. One was with a organization called the Family Justice Center of Washington County, and it was centered around child abuse and domestic violence and sexual assault, and it was a social effort. And they were trying to get their doors open. Washington County didn't have one. And so our Rotary Club jumped in and did 3 fundraisers and really raised a lot of money to get that project over the I guess hurdle they were in, and opened the doors. And now we actually are following up and measuring they send us information almost about 2 or 3 times every year about the numbers and how many people are coming through those doors and the help that they're giving. So it's been very rewarding. The second one is the same type of thing, only it was a elective that was offered out of our school district, and it was around aviation. And our Rotary Club went into the airport area in our city and remodeled an entire classroom, an office space, into a classroom. And now we have about 80 kids taking that elective this year and going to classes at the airport, so that it's aviation, there's airplanes, and they're learning, and it's a workforce development. They will go to a community college and only require 1 year because it's dual credit. So those are types of things that we've been looking at and said, boy, we can measure this. So
That's good. Judy, thank you for those examples. And Leslie, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to move on. There are 35,000, more than 35,000 clubs in the world, and each does multiple service projects in their communities, and many also internationally. Try to imagine the sheer volume of the doing good that we in Rotary are doing in the world. We may have more impact than any other non-governmental organization on earth, but how do we know? Not only measuring the impact of the service, but what about our members? How can you, or how do you measure how your club members feel about the success of your project? Leslie, I couldn't come to you last time, but love to come back to you. Celia, yeah, what do you have?
Well, I don't know that we measure how our club feels, but we do, as far as that quantifiable impact, we are starting to measure volunteer hours. That's something that, and there are now mechanisms to be able to do that within Club Runner.
Yes, yeah, and my Rotary. You're going to be encouraged by your governors-elect to keep your goals in my Rotary and your service projects. It's very important.
I think you asked the members in one way or another if they participated in a project, and if they didn't, why they didn't, because there may have been an intrinsic reason for them not to engage in that project, which would be helpful to know. And then, always ask, what would you have done differently if we were to have this project again? What was most successful for you, and what would you do differently next time?
For sure. By now, most of you have a My Rotary account. And if not, make sure you contact your assistant and ask to find out how. But you'll be asked by your district leadership to fill out your service project goals on Rotary Club Central. And if you fill them out before your year begins, and then you're good about updating the progress regularly, this will become good, trackable result for you going forward. As John Hugo said, these are the metrics by which good acts will be measured in the future. So we're going to have another breakout chat for 8 minutes, and each room will be given a different service project. And the goal is to come up with at least 5 ways that your club could measure the impact and or effectiveness of the project. So consider both short-term, long-term goals. Same thing as last time. Tim will divide you into 4 rooms. Note the room number before you go in, and Tim will have
You're in different rooms.
And Tim will have put the 4 service projects in the chat. So room 1, discuss project 1. We'll see you. Appoint a scribe. We'll see you in 8 minutes.
All right, I think everybody's back by now, and I think you all know the routine. So we're going to start with the first group, which apparently might have been challenging. Group number one, providing backpacks filled with school supplies at the beginning of the school year for all third grade students at an elementary school in a poverty-stricken area. So you were asked to come up with a variety of solutions on that. So you could give us your first couple, that would be great. So who's reporting for group number one?
That would be me, Tim. I'm Celia.
Thank you, Celia.
So we had a lively discussion, lots of ideas. Elspeth pointed out that she did like the way the question was poised, that we would be giving backpacks to all of the kids in the third grade. So there is no stigma attached. No child is singled out as being more needy than another. So we thought that was an important factor. How to measure that, we're not quite sure, but did think that it was great to be able to remove any stigma attached to the donation. Some of the ways that we thought we would be able to measure the impact of those donations is to, first of all, check with teachers, principals, counselors, and staff at the school, find out exactly what the needs are, find out how many students there are, and ask for specific requests from them as to the exact supplies so that we know that we're filling backpacks with things that are actually going to be used. And then ways to measure the impact of receiving those supplies is, did attendance increase? So were children more, kids that don't have things often don't go to school because they feel embarrassed or they don't have what they need. So did these supplies help increase attendance? And when they did attend, was engagement, were they more engaged, and was their comprehension and retention improved? And the way that we would check that, again, is to communicate with teachers, principals, and counselors directly, and then also survey parents, students themselves, and teachers.
Some great tools there for measuring the impact. Well done, group number one. Group number two was creating 6 mini libraries around your town. Mini libraries are little kiosks where community members can leave or take books. So who's leading group number two?
That would be me.
There you are.
We discussed that mini libraries are such a great idea, and we see them around our communities. In fact, my club is doing a project in conjunction with the local Girl Guides right now to install 3 mini libraries around our community. So one of the ways to determine how much impact you've had with that would probably be how often you're having to fill the libraries and change out the reading material. There was a suggestion that to have adult material as well as children's material. You may find that adults are actually using the Bookshare more than children are, or vice versa. Our group plans to put a stamp on the inside of each book with our website address, and we want to be able to track how many people are then being directed to our website from getting this book. So those are just a couple of the ways that our club is looking at trying to measure that impact that those will have. And a lot of other greats. Just a lot of people really thought it was a great project in and of itself.
That's great. Thanks, Jessica. You guys cheated because you've already got experience with it. So group number 3 was installing a water well in the middle of a village in East Africa. Formerly, the women were made to walk 2 miles each way to bring water to the village. So group number 3 leader is? Our group number 3 leader, somebody's pointing.
Sorry. I had to unmute. I think we were group number 3, but we didn't get the topic. That would be a great one to discuss. But we just talked about ways to impact short and long-term goals, etc. You want me to share back on that, or?
Go right ahead.
Okay. So we had the quote, at the end of the day, people won't remember what you said or did, but they remember how you made them feel. And so we kind of looked at impact in terms of engagement, maybe if funds came back or they just remembered you to come back or to do or fund a certain thing. And so that was the element of measuring impact, reflecting on the goals, not only at the beginning, but at the end.
Jen, I appreciate the fact that you guys couldn't find the question, but you didn't waste that time. You used it for something insightful for the whole group, and thanks for sharing that with the rest of us. That's great. So our last one was group number 4, and some folks say that it's the most difficult. We'll see what their answers were, right, Judy? Group number 4 was installing solar lights on the Navajo Reservation in Arizona so families can read and study long after the sun goes down. I would imagine in the wintertime. Group number 4 leader is it you, Judy?
No.
I will.
Oh, Alex.
I'll
Alex,
report.
tell us
Sorry,
what
yeah.
you folks come up with.
I was writing down everything. Actually, there was a very interesting conversation. We're all leaders, of course. And we came up with a few points. One, obviously, the physical measurements will be kilowatts per hour was used in type of power. The second one was to check with the academic improvement of these students, checking with local schools and leaders. And the one that we discussed the most, which was a direct survey to the individuals that were actually impacted. And we discussed about the improvement in the family relationship, that they were able to spend more time together with light, and also that sort of improvement, and how did the people actually felt, and the children and the adults, what they used that time for. So that's, again, in a nutshell.
That's great. And for a tough question, you folks came up with some very creative ways of measuring the impact. So well done. Well done to everybody. Thanks for your participation, and thanks to the reporters for getting back to us with the responses.
Thank you. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, everybody, for your reports. So we've talked about the importance of every Rotary Club making a greater impact. And as a club leader next year, you're in a unique position to help them make a greater impact. But remember, you don't have to do this. You don't have to do everything by yourself. What are some actions that that you might take next year to help your club towards making a greater impact? What are some things that you could do or get the members of your club to do? Elspeth, and then Tamara.
I just had one idea that was sparked off from the solar light conversation, is that I was, and this is very specific, so I don't know, but it occurs to me that Shelterbox, the organization Shelterbox, which Rotary has partnered with for a long, long time, has the ability to do solar lights or mosquito nets or individual things like that, as well as the whole container. And I was wondering if, as a club, if you decided to partner with Shelterbox, whether you couldn't do like solar lights for a whole community somewhere or something like that. That was, sorry, that just was what came into my mind. I don't know if it answers your question or not.
Oh, that's good. What I'm looking for is an action item that you might, as a club president, bring to your club. Tamara, what did you have for us?
Well, our club in Playa del Carmen, we do a lot of, have a lot of initiatives with schools, either helping with materials or shoes or uniforms, things like that. But what I would like to do is use the schools that there are, especially the bilingual schools that are here, to develop more of a youth club, so that Rotary can have little mini youth clubs in the high schools, so that they all learn, because I think we're well known around the community for our efforts, but it seems like it's always kind of just hands, are coming at us, wanting us to give, which we do. But I would like to teach them how to give back in a way to become volunteers in their own right. And I think that starts with children. So instead of always, giving, also teaching them how to give back as well.
Sure.
And that's what I would like to do.
Involving them. Good. All right. So we're gonna go. I'm gonna give you 2 minutes before, and then I'm gonna wrap this session up so we finish on time. But in this 2 minutes, I would like you to use that idea book. And if you don't have your copy of the idea book, you can use a piece of paper. It doesn't matter. But I want you to write down 2 or 3 action items that you would like to bring back to your club and say, what do you think about doing this? So 2 minutes. Now, I know that's not a lot of time, and I encourage you to finish this off when this session is over. Putting down a few action ideas right after you have a meaningful conversation like this is really a productive way to take advantage of what you heard and what you felt. But I want to thank you all for really stimulating conversation, insightful comments. I remind you that the 4 courses you are doing this weekend are all directed at Rotary's 4 priorities that make up our action plan. At the beginning, we started with some objectives, and to review, we should be able to explain what it means to increase our impact and why it's important. We should understand the value of community needs assessment, and also we should understand the value of a member's needs assessment. And we should be able to act on creating ways to evaluate the impact and the effectiveness of our service. So the full impact of Rotary, as we discussed it, is probably impossible to measure. I mean, what can be measured is the impact that your club brings to your projects, and most importantly, the satisfaction of your members who can take pride in a job well done. Rotary must continue to ensure that our projects have maximum impact and develop ways to measure and evaluate the value of our projects. At the International Assembly that has just completed, this is where next year's district governors receive their training. In her opening address, Rotary International President-elect Jennifer Jones introduced her theme, Imagine Rotary. And she quoted John Lennon's iconic lyrics by saying, "You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one." And she continued with the following thoughts. Imagine a world that deserves our best, where we get up each day knowing that we can make a difference. She said, you don't imagine yesterday, you imagine tomorrow. Imagine a world without polio. Imagine a world with clean water for everyone. Imagine a world free of disease, or a world where every child can read. You can imagine kindness and hope and love and peace. And then she went on to talk about the Broadway musical Rent. And there's a song in it, Seasons of Love. And there's a line, 525,600 minutes. How do you measure a year in a life? Well, this is your year to lead. Make sure you have fun doing it. Reminder that you will get a link for a survey. And I don't know the mechanism for that, but you folks who've been through the core courses probably do. But please make sure you fill out the survey for this and every other session you do, because it helps us to keep improving PATS every year. Thanks again, and I'll stick around for a few minutes if anybody has any questions. Take care.